I've always felt like a non-person, unseen, on the fringes, unimportant, just chattel to be used, abused, and discarded. For my life has been hard. It's been harsh from the very beginning. And I'm sharing my story with you today because this is a story for every person who's felt powerless, disenfranchised, useless, and unseen. My story begins in the great city, the great country of Egypt. But for me, it wasn't great. I'm born Egyptian. And I was born to a family of poverty. And I was sold as a child. I don't actually know my birthday. I don't even know my Egyptian name anymore. It's been forgotten. For I was sold as a job lot as a child to foreigners. These foreigners had come up from the land of Canaan because there was famine in their land and they were wealthy people. So they could come and buy what they needed from Egypt. And the head of the home had a wife who was beautiful. She was exotic from the city of Ur and absolutely stunning. And when I was sold to this family, she wasn't there because the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, had taken her into his harem because her husband had said it was his sister, so he felt she could. Because even women married to wealthy free men have no say in what becomes of them. But what then happened? Pharaoh's family began to fall ill, deathly ill. And he was told it was because of Sarah. And it was this woman who was married to Abram who was causing the problem. And so he sent her back with gifts, but he sent her back and said, get out of my land. And so as a young child who lost her family, I lost my homeland because I now belonged to them and I had to leave with them. And Sarai was pretty angry with her husband. So he gave me to her as a gift to appease her temper. And I can vouch, her face was beautiful. But she was cold. No one bothered to learn my name. They just called me Hagar, foreigner, alien one. So every time I was called, I was reminded I don't belong. I don't even have a real name. And as a child, she wasn't cruel, but I was desperately sad. I missed Egypt. I missed the Nile River. I missed the spicy foods. I missed the smell of the dust. I missed home. But cries were met with hard words and swift hits. And I adjusted. I learned to read her moods. My chores weren't onerous. They had many slaves. And I grew up. And her husband Abram camped out near the trees of Mamre in Hebron. And we stayed there for 10 years. 10 years I learned their language. I watched how they lived. And Sarai, for all her beauty, was barren, cursed because she could not have children. And I remember as a small child hearing her cry and say to her husband how she longed for a child. And he would comfort her, saying that their God had promised that he would be a father of a great nation with more descendants than sand, grains of sand in the desert. And yet she remained barren. And the years passed. And after 10 years, Sarai decided to take matters into her own hands, as our culture suggested. And I was washing her clothes outside when I heard her speaking to Abram. And he was told she would take me and give me to Abram to sleep with, because I belonged to her. So if I had a child, it would be hers, and they could begin this great family that their God had promised. And I was just a young girl, a young woman. He was 86 years old. And the thought filled me with revulsion. but my body does not belong to me. I have no opinions of my own. And so as Sarah dictated, so it happened. Abraham took my virginity. There was a small perk that came with it. For now I was elevated in status. I almost carried the status of a second wife. And Sarai began to complain that I was lording it over her. And I probably was, but I remembered every ugly word. I remembered her indifferent cruelty to the child who sobbed herself to sleep. And Abraham wasn't going to protect me. He made it known my status was just that of slave. I was just a breeding vessel to carry a child for her. And she treated me cruelly. And it didn't take long, and my menses stopped. And even that was public knowledge because it's not my body. I had conceived. And instead of this woman rejoicing she got what she wanted at the cost of myself, she treated me even worse. It was like she resented my fertility. She blamed me for something I never asked for, and the slaps were fast and hard, and her words were bitter and angry. And I decided I'd run away, because nothing could be as bad as this ongoing mental and physical abuse, this degradation, saying I was nothing every day. And so I waited. I stayed up, and as the light slowly started to rise over the desert, I fled. I could take nothing with me, because a slave who steals is a dead slave. I gave them no reason to chase me. I just left. And I remember the sand crunching under my thin indoor shoes. I remember the cold air of the desert against my skin. And I walked fast. And at first it wasn't so bad. I didn't even know where I was going. I headed in what I thought was the direction of Egypt. It was the only place that I could think of to go. And then the sun came up and it was hot. And I could feel the sweat dripping down my back. I could feel my lips cracking in the heat of the sun, that dry white stuff forming in the corners of my mouth. My throat was parched and hurting. And I slept. And it got dark. Just me and my cloak in the desert. I don't even know how long I wandered for. Eventually I came to a small spring, and it had been days since I'd seen another human. My spirit was broken, and I just collapsed. I started to cry. And then I heard a voice from behind me saying, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where do you come from? What are you doing here? And I turned, and there stood a man of immense power. And authority radiated from him, but there was something about his face that had compassion on me. And I said, I've run away from my mistress, Sarai. And he looked at me with kindness. But he said, you need to return to Sarai. And as the resentment started to burn within me, he said, for you are carrying a son. You bear the firstborn son of Abraham. And I'm telling you now, your son will be blessed. He will be wild like a donkey. He will be an adversary. He will fight with people and they will fight with him, and he will be anti his brothers. And I started to think of these words as I stared at this man. If he was going to be like a donkey and wild, was he going to be free? He wasn't going to be the son of just a slave. And it was to be a son. Not a daughter who would just be a slave like me, chattel for a man to use. A son. And I looked at him. And he said, God has heard your suffering. He has seen and he has heard you, Hagar. and something in my heart broke open. Nobody saw me, and yet God saw me. And I looked at him and I knew he was the angel of God. And I said to him, God has seen me, and I have seen God. And I will do as you say. And I drank my fill from that spring. And I turned and I followed my steps back to the camp. And when I got back, Sarai mocked me for my attempted escape. But I didn't care. No longer could her words hurt me because God saw me. How she treated me didn't matter. God cared for me, and I knew I carried a son. And with pregnancy comes privilege. I was given the best food. I was taken off all my duties. And Sarai was not allowed to beat me anymore. And 8.5 months later, I gave birth to this beautiful baby boy. And as the angel of God told me, I called him Ishmael. And for the first time in my life, somebody loved me. Ishmael loved me. He needed me. And he was mine. And Abram rejoiced in the birth of his first son. And Sarai, who organized all of this, she viewed me with contempt. But she didn't take my child from me. I kept raising my son. And I held God's words close to my heart, that he would be a father of great nations. And time passed. 10 years passed. I watched my beautiful boy grow. And the kicks, the slaps, the nasty words, I didn't care. I had my son. God had blessed me with my own son. And then, that same God spoke to Abram. He renewed his covenant with him. And he told him, you are going to be the father of a great nation. And from Sarah would come this great nation. And there would be more descendants than stars in the sky, and he would give them the land of Canaan as their very own. And then he said he would change his name from Abram to Abraham, father of many nations. And he told him to circumcise all males in the camp, a deeply intimate gesture of a covenant with the Most High God. And my son would be included in that covenant. And then he said that Sarai's name was to change too. It was to change from troublesome to princess, mother of kings, and that she would have a baby. Bear in mind, he's nearly 100 when they get this word. Sarah is in her 90s. And I thought, maybe if she has a baby, she won't be such a bitter witch. Maybe it'll soften her soul. And shortly after that, we had 2 angels of God come and visit in the camp. And they told them again, Sarah is going to have a child. And she laughed in derision. But they heard her. And they said, you are going to have a child. And he will be the beginning of this great nation. And shortly after that, Abram packed up our tents. And we moved through the Negev desert. And we went to Hagar. And while in Hagar, once again, Abraham lied and said that Sarah was his sister, not his wife, because even at 90, she was beautiful. There was something about that city girl polish that men desired. And the king of the region, Abimelech, heard of her, and he sent for her, and he took her. But God appeared to him, and before he slept with her, warned him that this was Abraham's wife. And so he sent her back, sadly. I was hoping he would just keep her, because the camp was really pleasant without her. Sadly, he did not. He sent her back with cattle and goats and slaves and 1,000 shekels, and the right to live in the land. And it was there that finally Sarah felt pregnant. And it was a God miracle, because there was no ways that this could possibly happen. And she was like a peacock. Like she's the only woman who's ever fallen pregnant. And we had to do everything for her. She could not even reach her hand out for a piece of fruit. But it was fine. She was filled with joy, and it made her quite pleasant. And eventually their baby was born. And it was a boy. And as they had been told, they called him Isaac. He laughs. And she cherished that boy with her whole heart. She lavished attention and gifts, and anything he wanted he could have. And she despised Ishmael. And she saw me with contempt. She seemed to forget that she'd engineered this. This was not my idea. It was not Ishmael's fault. He was the firstborn and her beloved Isaac's older brother. And she made things hard, but it was not unusual for us. And then, beautiful Isaac was about to be weaned. And my son was just playing with him. Brothers tease each other. They play with each other. And she saw, and she took it wrong. And she went to Abraham and said, "Get rid of them now. I don't want them as part of this family. Get rid of them." Abraham told her to do as she pleased, because I was his and hers, and she could do what she liked. And he didn't defend his own son, Ishmael. He said that he knew God had said that Ishmael would be one of a great nation. So he gave us the food and water we could carry and sent us from the camp into the desert. Not a donkey, not a guard, not a tent, nothing. My boy's 14 years old. How far can we go? Where can we go? And we walked through that wilderness. Where are you, God? Where is your promise? Can you see my suffering now? And eventually the food ran out and the water ran out. And we were so dehydrated. We didn't even sweat anymore. There was no fluid left in our body. And Ishmael collapsed. And I found a little low bush and I pushed him under me. And I moved a little over there and I cried. I could not watch the only person who had ever loved me die. And I could hear my son crying. And as I lay in that hot baking sand, I heard a voice from heaven. God called me and he said, "Hagar, why do you cry? I see your son lying in the sand. I know you and I see you. And you are going to be all right. He will be the father of 12 nations. And he is blessed by me." And as I looked in astonishment, there in front of me was a well. And I grabbed my empty water skin and I filled it and I gave it to my son. And then I filled it again and I drank from it, and that cold water was nectar going down my throat. And we stayed at the well, just drinking, rehydrated, recovering. But I knew in my soul that God's got us and it's going to be all right. And shortly after, a caravan of camels and Bedouin tribe arrived. And not only did they feed us, they gave us shelter and called us family and pulled us into their tribe and took us with them. And we moved to live with them in the desert of Paran. And I watched my son grow. And yes, he was wild like a donkey. He was the best archer in the whole camp. He was a fighter, and he was free. And when he came of age, I found him a good Egyptian wife. And they have had 12 sons. 12 sons, just like God promised. And they are growing into this great tribe, a nation that my son leads. We haven't seen Isaac again. We don't know what's happened to Abraham and Sarah, and we care less. For God saw us in our suffering. God heard us cry, and God kept his promises. And that's the story of Hagar.